Welcome to Growing Startups, where we talk to growth leaders and marketing professionals about how to drive sustainable growth from the ground up. I'm your host, Evelyn Cools, and I lead marketing for tech startups. I'm excited to share these candid conversations about marketing, culture, collaboration, and everything else that makes startups grow. This is an episode I've been waiting for, and we've rescheduled a couple times, so I'm glad we're here. We're both working moms, busy people in the startup world, so glad we could both find some time to make it happen. But today I'm talking to Kt McBratney. I hope I pronounced that right.
Perfect.
Okay. She's the GP and head of community at Renew Venture Capital, which I think you're the first person on this podcast that works for a VC. So I think that's already going to be an interesting angle. But she works closely with early stage founders as they build and grow their companies, and a former marketer as well. So there's a lot for us to talk about. But Kt, would you start us out with just a little bit of background on you and what you're doing right now?
Absolutely. I'm so glad to be here. So thanks for having me. As you mentioned, I'm a career marketer who moved over into early stage startups a little over a decade ago, first as an operator, growing companies from 0 to 1 with a focus on organic brand, community-led growth, before co-founding my own company, which we operated for about 3.5 years, called Own Trail, and then moving over to the VC side, where I bring both the marketing, brand, and community lens to helping our portfolio companies, delivering returns for investors, and honestly just saying, how can we grow companies in a way that is less extractive and proves that there can be both good financial outcomes and good put into the world. So working with early stage founders is truly a joy of my career and something I love doing. And as you know, marketing always comes up.
That it does. And I have a million questions for you. But before we get into those, I'd love to hear from you. Something I ask every guest is, what is your wellness practice or a ritual that you do to keep yourself sane in this world?
I love this question, and I'm inspired to hear that you ask it of everyone. There's 2 things I do regularly, and I push myself to do regularly, almost like a practice more than a habit. If it feels like an obligation, I will not do it necessarily, even though it's good for me, kind of like taking my own vitamins. So one is going outside and going for a walk by myself without devices, podcasts, or any productivity. I'll have my phone with me just in case, but it's in my pocket. It's off. And I truly just spend the time being on my own, noticing things that I would pass, and not notice. Like maybe it's a flower, maybe it's a sound, maybe it's my own breathing, whatever it is, but really just being present. And even if it's just for 10 minutes in between calls, or if I can do a longer walk or at the end of the day, it's just a way for me to reset in a career and world that's just so noisy and can often feel, in our screen forward industry, disconnected from the physical world, when the reality is it's all part of the same. The other one I do is I really make time to create art when I can. So be that just a quick doodle, writing down a few lines, or creating space to, again, be alone and maybe make some physical art is a really resetting and rejuvenating practice for me. Again, the satisfaction of making something with your hands, of creating an idea from nothing, is very similar to building a startup. And unlike building a startup, when it's done, it's done. There's a finite beginning and end. So that's very satisfying and good for my mental health to do that too.
This podcast is brought to you by Evelyn Cools Marketing. If you're an early stage B2B tech founder who wants marketing to actually work, you're in the right place. As a fractional head of marketing and growth advisor, I help early stage B2B startups take marketing from 0 to 1 by building the foundations, testing different channels, and scaling what works. I'm currently offering a free strategy call where I do an audit of what you've tried with marketing so far and share practical advice that I believe will make the biggest impact on your growth engine. Visit evelyncools.com to book your free strategy call today. Now back to the episode. I've never thought of it that way, but you're right. Our work is never finished, but if you can create something physical, you actually have a start and end point, which feels very nice. And just bringing things back to the physical in general, like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like we live in a separate world away from everyone else. Like the tech industry and especially startups are just such like a bubble in itself. And
Ah,
my husband works in a very physical field, and sometimes I'm like, whoa, like the things you do day to day are so different, and you're actually like in person with these items and these people, and I'm like, oh, there's a whole other world here that is easy to forget about.
so right, so right.
Something that you said that I think is an interesting place to start is it always, like marketing always comes up. And I would love to, before we actually talk about marketing and how to make that work or how founders should think about marketing, I feel like there's a point where maybe in the very early stages, startups might actually not need marketing, even if they think they do, but they might actually just need customers. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
That's a good one. So I like to think about this in two ways. There's when does a startup need marketing and when does a startup need a marketing function? And to me, those aren't necessarily synonymous. So I'm with you. A lot of times you need to know what you're building, what you're selling, and who your customer is. So like that should be the focus. That doesn't require having like a marketing strategy, a marketing spend, a channel mix, knowing your CAC. It's too soon, right? It's too soon for that. It can be an absolute like distraction and waste of resources to invest in it too early. However, I'll counter myself a little bit. If we zoom out to like what marketing is at a whole, getting those first customers, establishing what your brand is, honing your elevator pitch, those are parts of marketing. So what I encourage founders to think about is what are you actually trying to achieve? Instead of thinking of, is this marketing, is this sales, is this biz dev, is this strategy? Because at the very, very, very earliest stages, yes, it's probably all of those. And thinking about them as concrete specialized disciplines can actually like overcomplicate or overwhelm what the job to be done is, which is like learn how to talk to people about the thing you're building, which then can inform marketing and more like programmatic or standardized things. But I think a lot of time the worry shouldn't be about what's the thing called. It's about what am I trying to achieve and how am I resourcing it appropriately?
Yeah, a lot of things are marketing activities that you need, even in the very beginning. Even if you're sales led, the founder is doing all the sales, you still need something that is going to feel compelling and trustworthy for the person you're talking to. Do you think founders should do that themselves? Should they outsource? Should they like hire someone? Contractors, an actual full-time hire? Like what do you feel like for most people you work with, and it's probably different for each person, but what do you think like a good step is? Because a lot of founders, I think, feel a little bit like it's daunting marketing if you're not a marketer. So what resourcing should they look for?
Great question. I think about this a lot, and the short and somewhat disappointing answer is it depends, right? I want to like underline what you said is a lot of founders who don't come from a marketing background feel like it's scary, intimidating, something they can't do. And so like one of the first things I like to do with those founders and I find useful is, and they find useful is saying like, what do you think marketing is? And why do you have this like weird feeling about it? Is it that it's new? Is it that it's complex? Is it because your experience with it was in a highly matrix organization and it was a team you barely worked with? Okay, cool. That's not your business right now. So really starting by level setting. And when it comes to resourcing, I map it to what do you need to get done and what's the right path? And sometimes that is maybe a project-based contractor, like if you're doing your initial visual brand identity or something like that, or a website build out, or help developing maybe educational content, right, to fill the top of funnel. Sometimes your kind of learning curve to do that yourself to the degree of quality you want and the speed you want makes sense to hire somebody, contract, full, part-time, fractional, whatever. But I think that you have to balance the job to be done, which should be rooted in something measurable, right? You have the marketing collateral to move through your funnel if you're sales based, right? You've got like a one pager and maybe a lead gen site, whatever it is. that's measurable. You have it and you can measure whether or not it's working, all of that. So like first, what's this outcome? What resources and timing do you have available? So both looking at resources holistically, it's not just about what you can pay somebody. It's about the resources of your own skill set and your own aptitude to try something new, especially now that AI has kind of collapsed this technical barrier for a lot of folks to at least try. And then there's also, of course, the time and financial. So like you've got to look at your own risk calculation and say, what resource do I have enough to give? And then map that to the type of human talent that you want to map it to. All that said, though, I think a mistake that probably you've seen often early is somebody will bring on an expensive corporate marketer as their first hire, which is a very expensive hire to build out a function that is not the same as the job they came from. And that's something I steer early stage founders away from a lot. I don't know. Does that track with what you see?
Oh, yeah. I think I talk about this quite a bit on the podcast in different ways. Like, why are there so many mishires in marketing at startups? Like, why do so many startups go through multiple hires in a year, for example? I've been a founding marketer for a company like that. And I think they're just like looking for certainty, which is something you can't really find regardless. Like if you're a startup, you can't just like copy paste something that someone did at a previous job. So I think certainty is like coming from, okay, how many years of experience at what like big name companies? How many people have they led? Like you're kind of looking at all these markers of success that maybe are relevant to like other companies of that size, but startups are just like a whole other beast. And also people either like that chaos or they really don't. And a lot of like senior leaders at huge companies, I don't actually think they love the chaos of being at a startup. So I think there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah. And there's such an adjustment curve too. You know, I think about on one of the startup teams I led when we brought on someone to take on marketing and they were partway in and they were like, no, actually, I just prefer to have people do this. I prefer to just have a team to do this for me. And we were like, we all knew, including this person, when they said that it wasn't a match. We were like, that's not what this is. And there are lots of places you can do that and be successful, but it won't be here. And that's not fair to either side. And sometimes just having those conversations can be uncomfortable, but so necessary and liberating to get everybody right back on track.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the, I think, challenges for founders with early stage marketing is who to hire. And you've seen a lot of things coming from marketing, but now you also work with a lot of different companies. And I think you have more of like a bird's eye view of what's working and what's not. So are there any other things that you feel like are common challenges or mistakes founders make with marketing or growth in general at those early stages?
Absolutely. I mean, one that I've seen and I've been guilty of myself in the past is random acts of marketing and just over diluting your effort, trying everything all at once, which means you're not able to do any of them well enough to learn anything useful. As much as I love the internet, as somebody who's chronically online, there's a lot of shoulds out there and a lot of people sharing what worked for them that feels like it's the silver bullet, right? It's the certainty that you mentioned. But they're not you and they're not building your business and they're not building it at this exact moment in time. And so I've seen founders, whether they're doing marketing themselves, have some additional resource on their team or through fractional or contract, do too much all at once without a strategy and or without measurement. Like saying like we should be on TikTok and build up our TikTok following. That's an activity as a founder at heart always and a marketer at heart always. Now as an investor and with, more than 20 years of doing and seeing this, I'm like, that activity is fine, but only if it directly leads to an outcome that you know that outcome. And so many times I just see the spaghetti at the wall, but the founder can't even see the wall that they're throwing at. And that's awful. And it's really hard to see someone struggle like that. And oftentimes like the best course of action is just like focus, narrow in. What are you actually trying to do? And where do you feel the most conviction and most signal that it's going to work instead of throwing out Hail Marys left and right?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's even hard for marketers. I feel like it's hard for
Yeah.
it's hard for founders,
Yeah.
obviously, when they're seeing everyone on LinkedIn say like, I like 10x'd my business in 1 month because I have this agent that does everything that a 10-person marketing team would do, you know?
Which, like, also, do we even know is true? Like, I'm not
Probably
saying that
not.
people are blatantly lying, but like, social media is known for where people perform the hits, right? Or kind of share vulnerability for an outcome. And so, like, okay, they might have 10x'd it with an agent, but what about all the, like, the year and a half before where everything they tried didn't work?
Yeah, and
We don't get the full
maybe they
picture.
10x like a segment of their business or something. You know, it's just I don't know. I feel like all of it is kind of bullshit. Like there's some interesting things, but I have to say that like as a marketer, whenever I get slacked something about like we should try this or look what our competitors doing, like what are we doing here? It's like really stressful at first, but then also I think the job of a good marketer is to explain like why something will or will not work or is
Yes.
worth investing in at what time. So there's a lot of great stuff out there and actually I enjoy seeing a lot of it, but it can also really pull you in different directions and
Hmm.
you end up coming kind of like a mediator versus just like being able to do your job sometimes.
Yeah. Part of the job is filtering and discernment. And if you're brought in or taking on the role as being a founding marketer or part of that founding team, part of your job is to weed out what isn't the right use of time and energy, right? And if you even want to think like selfishly about your own career only, which is absolutely valid and fine, that's a way to set yourself up for success. So if you're just saying yes to any flyby opportunity, you're going to overwhelm yourself, you're going to overexert yourself, and you're not going to get to see the results that allow you to be successful, right? So if you focus on 2 or 3 things, you find out maybe email isn't working, you're able to move on faster to find the thing that does. And that's so much more effective, not just for the company, but for your career.
Speaking of things that do or don't work, you and I are both a fan of organic marketing, especially in those early stages. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experience with that, why you believe that, and if there's any channels like now or strategies you've seen from companies within that that you think are working really well.
That's a big, juicy question.
I know
And
I should
also,
have split it up.
I love that we both love organic because there was a time where paid, especially paid social, was like it and the only thing people wanted to focus and invest on. Part of the reason I believe in organic and kind of owned marketing channels are because I've seen it work at companies of various sizes across B2B, B2C, B2B2C, various scale, different industries. So I've seen it. I've seen it myself. But I understand that in lieu of that, it can feel really scary because sometimes it's a longer tail. The short answer for me is it's a direct line to your customers, your community, and your audience. You're not having to depend on a third party and their whims, their strategy changes, competitors who might be bidding for same keywords or same targeting, right? And affect that ecosystem of the paid ad and acquisition world, which I totally respect. I have so much respect for growth and performance marketers in that way. And at the same time, like there aren't as many things in your control. A challenge that I find fun can be intimidating about organic is like it's an art and a science. You have to find your right channels and your right strategy. And ultimately, like to me, it always comes back to you need to know who your customer is and you need to find where they are and be there in an added value way, in an authentic way, not in like a creepy way or overly salesy way. That's the quote unquote secret. And that takes time and work and experimentation. But I liken it to like, you wouldn't go to a party. Let's say you're raising money, I don't know, you're running a marathon or collecting donations for the food bank. You wouldn't literally walk into a party full of strangers and walk up and say like, hi, I'm Katie. I'm raising money for a food bank. Can I have $10? It's the same with organic marketing. Like it's weird. That's just like a weird ad. So I think that what I'm seeing work is a lot of community-led growth, is a lot of human storytelling, and is a lot of like unsubscribing from like, this is a hack that worked for somebody in a different industry and following your customers and talking to them like actual humans.
Shocker.
I know. Revolutionary, right?
I mean, I think what you're saying is so helpful as well. Like, just it sounds so obvious, but like going back to knowing your customer and where they live and like what they want to see from you. I feel like nowadays we're always trying to get like the shortcut, whereas maybe you just need to like talk to your ideal customer and ask them the right questions, and you'll get there much quicker than like trying all these different things online and just like throwing spaghetti at the wall. So I
And
think
be
it's good
there.
you
If
brought
they're
that up.
hanging out in person, have you gone to any of their places? Maybe there's a founder I'm working with who has a kind of like a creative, it's a physical product that helps with art and creativity. It's a physical product. It exists in the real world. Her customers will be using it in the real world. She is going out to where these customers are in the real world versus staying behind a screen and thinking that that is going to give her the same amount of learning. And we're already seeing that she discovered she actually has a bigger market segment than she originally thought. And she only learned that by talking to them and being where they are.
Yep. I'm a big fan of the in-person movement in marketing right now. It's very fun.
Yeah. And also, like, I think, thinking about your background too, we're ultimately people. Marketing is about communicating something of value to somebody who would want to buy it, right? When you're marketing for B2B, you're still selling to people. And I think that that's another opportunity for organic that, of course, complements like any sales motion. But that's an opportunity that's quite exciting and creative, right? Because you can develop relationships that can lead to longer loyalty and retention and referral and all of that. And yes, it doesn't always scale. But when you're at the early stages, that's what you need to learn is what works initially, what will scale and what won't. And so sometimes I see people immediately worrying about like, oh, if I do something in person, or if I spend time on customer discovery, or if I focus on testing 1 or 2 channels at a time, it's going to take too long. And I'm like, yeah, but if you try to do everything all at once, you're going to do a lot to move nowhere.
Maybe I need that on a bumper sticker.
Be a very long bumper sticker, the way I said it.
No, sometimes it's really nice for me to like hear the thoughts that I have get articulated by other people, because I can just send this to people and then it's not me saying it.
Oh, I'll do the same. I'll be like, by the way, did you know what Evelyn said about that?
Something that I want to kind of double click on is the community piece. And obviously in marketing, I feel like this is becoming a very like known strategy, is like building community around your brand. But I feel like what you're doing is also very cool. And I haven't seen that many VCs do it, at least not the way that you're approaching this, which is really like building community and education for founders. And I think that might even have like a bigger impact on the growth of their business than anything else they could be doing. So I'd love to hear kind of your philosophy around that and what you're doing right now.
Thank you. For me, I think of community like it's a word I struggle with, honestly. I love it and I loathe it because it can mean everything and nothing. And for me, community is a strategy. And of course, like tactics map to it. But like consolidating people in a Slack is not a community. It's a platform, a container where community can occur, but that's not community. So I like to be really clear about that. And the way I think about community and the way that I've built it here at Renew VC is built upon what I did for the decade prior at Seed and Spark and then with Own Trail, my own company. But it's saying, how can we change the relationship, or how do we change the operating system of our business to prioritize and center as the force of gravity relationships instead of transactions? So instead of every decision, even if it results in a sale at some point, instead of prioritizing how quickly we can get to that, how do we prioritize the relationship and what that person needs? And therefore, even if they're not a customer, they could be a vendor, they could be an employee, they could be someone who believes in your mission, but will never pay for it because they're not in the right category. You can create more surface area for positive outcomes that lead to community-led growth. And that's kind of the system that I've been building And it's counter to a lot of the chase down to the lowest CAC methods of paid acquisition, right? Of getting the lowest bid, of getting the most impressions, of maximizing your CPM. And again, I love you, performance marketers. I love what you do. And this is why it's a complementary strategy, right? Is this idea of saying like you're centering what people need and what creates value for them as much, if not more, than you're centering what creates value for yourself. And it's this very much creating an intentionally leaky bucket so that you're not the only person or organization capturing value. And what I've seen and what I'm continuing to try to scale and prove out is that it is that rising ships mentality, right? And because you have actually solved someone's problem, created an opportunity for them, it does come back to you in some way, even if it's not directly last click attributable. It doesn't all, again, it's not all digital, right? It can be having an excellent customer service experience, and that person, you change their day, their partner asks why, they tell you it's because they called this company because of a billing issue. It's an opportunity. And it's also a way to operate cross-functionally across organizations, especially startups, that can get a bit siloed in functions, right? Community is a strategy that connects marketing across product design, sales, of course, marketing, and leadership. It's really like the connective tissue for growth.
It really is. I'm glad you framed it in that way, because I sometimes say that I feel like the company therapist, because I'm trying to like make everyone agree on like the value that we're providing, and I have to like pull things out of people.
And
It
focus is
can,
important, right? We need
Mhm.
people to be focused on their subject matter expertise and jobs to be done. And we lose a lot if we don't poke our heads up to go like, what's happening over there?
Yeah, it really ties it all together. I feel like the internal like company culture and mission and everyone being aligned is actually also part of marketing.
Oh, yes. That's why we have internal comms teams, right? Like that's part of it. It's saying like we're all hopefully moving towards the same direction and know that and know why. We just have different roles in getting us there. That's the
Yeah,
dream,
that's
isn't it?
I know, such a great feeling, something I strive for every day.
Same.
Okay, I'm actually really curious from a little bit more of like a VC perspective, because as a marketer, I feel like the last 10 years that I've been in startup growth, the things that get funding have changed,
Mm.
especially when it comes to like growth of companies. And I feel like earlier in my career, investors were really looking for signals for growth, but not necessarily like revenue. Like revenue wasn't the only indicator for something that could have traction. But over the last couple years, I feel like it's been a little bit more of like revenue at all costs versus more targeted, like making sure you understand your ICP, you're actually getting the revenue in the right like areas for your business. That's been like a little bit of my experience with maybe like top down leadership saying what's important. And I'm curious if I'm in any way understanding what's happening correctly.
No, I definitely see that from this perspective, especially in the past 2 years.
Mhm.
It's something that's been happening probably since about 2020, 2021, especially is when I feel like I saw it really start to become clear was 2021, 2022. And there's a lot of factors into it. And, we don't need to go into the why of it, but part of it is certainly influenced by like macro conditions and the end of the ZERP era and fundraising being harder and, the pendulum swing in DEI and kind of all of that. One silver lining, though, is that it's requiring and also inviting founders and founding teams to go back and think, what is this as a business? Not what is this as a product or a brand or an idea or a vision. The business of being an entrepreneur and a founder is building a business. And that means creating something that people will pay for and that repeats. We were in an era for a long time that the dominant storylines could be companies that had raised millions and millions, millions and millions of dollars and hadn't turned a profit and still didn't know how. I do like that we're getting back to centering what makes this a revenue driving business and getting to that sooner, not just because it's literally the best pitch is your sales. Like your sales figures and your customer base are better than any pitch deck, but like it's the job, it's the focus. And I do think sometimes the ability to build on vision and think about getting customers later kind of had us lose the plot for a bit.
Great answer. And it's hard for marketers too when it's all just like vision because it feels very intangible. There's nothing a marketer likes more than attributable pipeline. So,
And a specific thing, right? If you're like, hey, we're pivoting from selling annual subscriptions to doing usage tier-based SaaS, great. Like if we understand the why, we can communicate that and do our job better than we're selling solutions to people that work. Like I feel like ambiguity is one of the biggest obstacles you can put in your marketer's like road. Specificity is a gift. And even if you don't know, you can say like, look, we think accountants are our client base, but that's what we're going to test. And we have this many days or this many weeks and this amount of budget to figure it out. I mean, you know, because you do this, you've done this for a long time. We can work that math backwards and say, okay, how do we get to there given the resources we have? But if it's like, go find people, go market to people who do business. Okay.
I don't know what to do with that.
Right.
You mean everyone?
Okay. I guess not preschoolers. That helps. But maybe.
No, specificity is a gift is a great line and feels very true. I know we're getting close to time, but I have one more question related to growth and then one more question for you. So
are you sure we can't talk all day long? This is fun.
We would talk all day. This is about, I phrased the question for myself like this. Why is emotional runway just as important as financial runway? Because I feel like a lot of founders burn the stick at both ends and it trickles down to their team and everywhere else in the business. So do you feel like it is more important or also important?
It absolutely is. First of all, I love that you asked this question. And I love that you mentioned that it trickles into the team, even if the founder tries not to. Financial runway for the vast majority of founders is already challenging enough to acquire, manage, all of that. Emotional runway, I would argue, in the high pressure, high stakes, especially of VC-backed startups, but in any startup, is less measurable and often harder to replace, right? And as the founder, if you know your financial runway is getting low, you can see that number. You can do the math of your burn rate. You know the levers you can adjust, right? Be it your spend, be it a reduction in staff, be it increasing prices. It feels more tangible. But the reality is you can't do any of those things or do them effectively if you have burned up all your emotional runway. That's the thing that in early stages, it's absolutely critical that the founder is an irreplaceable resource. Not to say that we are all like these, snowflakes of people. We are. And also like, yes, you can find somebody else to leave if you decide to, your company outgrows your leadership, etc. But at the early stage, this is yours and you have taken on the responsibility to manage this business, other people's livelihoods. You have a fiduciary responsibility to your investors. You can't do that job well if you are chronically unwell. Healthy people build healthy businesses, and obviously it's not a perfection game. It needs to be a bigger part of the equation and a bigger part of the conversation. And if I can champion that from the investor side and encourage others to too, then I can go to bed happy.
I love that. That's what it's all about in the end.
Yeah.
Healthy people build healthy businesses. I could not agree more. All right, I have one more question for you, Katie, before we go, which is, what is something that you're excited about in both your personal and your professional life right now?
So many things. I might name a couple and cheat, so I'll just name that. I might break the rule. One, I'm excited to have more ice cream meetings. It's a thing I came up with. You and I are having one, which adds a little bit of variety and delight into a world of coffee meetings and Zooms. So saying like, hey, I have the ability and the privilege to say, let's meet for an ice cream instead while it's hot out, and use that as like a jumping off point to either start relationships or to build on top of them. So I'm very excited for the rest of my ice cream meetings this summer. And I'm in the South. We can go further into the fall. The weather cooperates. I'm also excited personally and professionally by this initiative that we piloted in Atlanta this spring called Pixel Recess Experience that we're looking to take to other cities. And that's really a community-led model, a framework that gathers people from across different roles in a startup ecosystem, founders, funders, ecosystem partners, and brings them together in a more meaningful collaboration to surface assumptions, talk about resources and needs, and really free us all, investors included, from this idea that the thing we need, the only thing that will help us achieve what we need is this mythical blank check with no strings attached. And to say, yes, we need capital, but maybe there are different paths to get there and resources and people that can help us. So I'm excited to continue building on that and see where the seeds that I help plant get nurtured by other people and see what fruit they bear and celebrate them from afar.
Sounds amazing. Is that in person or are there specific events going on?
Those are in progress, so stay tuned. We're in talks with folks from about 4 different city kind of metro areas across the U.S., and we'll hopefully be doing those later in 2026 and through 2027, and really thinking like, how can I help web a community like the one you've built to transcend beyond roles and geography, to have more of conversations like you are so good at holding yourself, to say like, what is the reality of this? What sucks? What's in our control to change? So stay tuned.
Cool. So cool. And thank you for that. What a beautiful way to end the conversation and for me to go on with my day.
Happy to share it.
Last question is just, where can people connect with you?
Yeah. So the best place to find out and keep up to date on what we're doing with community and with early stage startups is renewvc.com. And LinkedIn is where I hang out on the internet for the most part. You can just search my name, Kt McBratney, no vowels in the first name. And then I also write regularly irregular newsletter called Disrupting the Status Bro that's linked to from my website, ktmcbratney.com, or you can find it on my LinkedIn profile, I'm sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. What a great tagline.
Thank you. It's kind of my life's work. Whether I'm getting paid for it or not, I'm here to do the good trouble.
We need more people disrupting it. So thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
All right, Katie, I'm excited to see what you do with all the community efforts and just for us to stay in touch, have some ice cream. I would even have ice cream with you in the winter. So if you ever want to suggest that, I'm down.
Ice cream knows no season.
It really doesn't. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was a joy, and I'm sure people got a lot out of the conversation. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
Thanks for listening to Growing Startups. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to give us a rating so more people can find the show. So happy you're here, and see you in the next one.